Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I was standing in the doorway with my duffel bag digging into my shoulder when my dad's voice cut through the living room like a slap. "She wants us to beg her now?" he shouted. "You think you're some kind of victim, Rachel? You're a damn burden. You've always been one." I didn't flinch. I just waited. One of them had to say something that meant more than that. Something human. "My name's Rachel. I'm 18. I grew up in a small house just outside Springfield, Illinois. And in that moment, I realized I didn't actually have a home. My mom sat frozen on the edge of the couch, staring past me like she didn't even see me there. Her hands were clenched in her lap, her shoulders locked up like she was bracing for an earthquake. But nothing came. She didn't speak, didn't move. "Don't call us. Don't come crawling back when life chews you up," my dad added, voice low and steady now, like he was closing a deal. "You want to leave? Then leave. That's your choice. Quick note, before we go on, tell us, where are you listening from right now?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, throw it at the wall and make them see me. But I didn't do any of that. I just nodded, turned around, and stepped into the cold night with nothing but a bag of clothes and $83 to my name. The screen door slammed shut behind me, loud and final. I walked down the driveway without looking back. The sky was clear, and the streetlight made the frost on the sidewalk shimmer like fake snow. My fingers were numb. My jaw was locked so tight it ached. Every step I took felt heavier than the last. Not because of the bag, but because of everything I was leaving behind, what little there was. I didn't have a plan, just a bus pass, some cash, and a motel address I found on my phone 15 minutes earlier. When I got there, the guy behind the plexiglass window didn't even look up when I slid the money under. The room smelled like bleach and old cigarettes. The sheets were thin. The heater rattled like it had arthritis. I didn't sleep. I just laid there staring at the ceiling, still wearing my jacket, trying to feel something other than hollow. The one thing I knew for sure, I wasn't welcome in that house anymore. I was officially on my own, and nobody was coming to stop me. I stayed 2 more nights in that motel until the money ran dry. Then I took the first job I could find, waitressing at this greasy little diner off the highway, and used the paycheck to put down a deposit on a roach-infested one-bedroom on the east side of town. The apartment smelled like mildew and burnt popcorn. The carpet was stained with God knows what, and the walls were yellow from years of someone else's cigarettes. But the lock worked, and the toilet flushed, so I called it home. Morning started before the sun. I stocked shelves at a 24-hour grocery store from 5 to 9, changed into my diner uniform in the backseat of my beat-up Corolla, and served coffee and overcooked eggs until 4. 3 nights a week, I cleaned offices downtown from 6 to midnight. I didn't have time to think. I liked it that way. The walls in the apartment were paper thin. Every night, I heard the couple next door scream at each other until someone slammed a door. A dog barked nonstop upstairs. Someone smoked weed in the hallway. At first, I shoved towels under the door to block the smell, but eventually I stopped caring. What hit me hardest wasn't the noise. It was the silence between shifts. The hours when I'd sit at my little card table eating ramen, not a single person in the world knowing or caring where I was. There were nights I curled up in bed and cried into my pillow, pressing it tight over my face so no one would hear. I missed being someone's daughter, even if they'd stopped acting like parents a long time ago. One night, I broke down while wiping mustard off a table. A customer asked if I was okay, and I just nodded and smiled. Then I went into the bathroom and threw up. I told myself I wouldn't break. I repeated that every morning. Sometimes it worked. The rejection stung more than I expected. Not just what my dad said, but my mom. The way she didn't even look at me, that emptiness stuck with me, like a bruise that wouldn't fade. There were moments, especially around midnight when I was mopping some stranger's office, that I'd think, what's the point? What was I even building toward? I had no safety net, no backup plan, just rent, bills, and my own damn stubbornness. So I filled every second. I enrolled in night classes at Lincoln Community College, took gen eds at first, English, psych, some dumb required math course. I studied flashcards while cleaning toilets and read textbooks on my lunch breaks. I told myself if I could just get through one semester, I'd do another. If I could survive 1 week, I could do one more. I didn't go out, didn't make friends, couldn't afford either. But I kept showing up, every shift, every class. Every night, I came home with my feet aching, my back screaming, and my hands raw from bleach. There were still moments when I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, wondering if I mattered to anyone. The quiet always answered for me. But even in that silence, I didn't quit. One Friday night, around 2 in the morning, I came home from the office gig and found a notice shoved under my door. It wasn't an eviction, thank God, just a reminder that rent was due in 3 days. I stared at it, wiped my face, and went to the fridge. Inside, there was half a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, and 2 eggs. I made a sandwich, sat down at the table, and opened my psych textbook. If no one else was going to believe in me, then I'd do it myself. I finished the sandwich, took a few deep breaths, and got back to highlighting lines in my psych textbook until I passed out at the table. That became the routine. Grind, crash, repeat. Every hour of my life was spoken for, and still it wasn't enough. But the more I worked, the more I started thinking bigger. I didn't want to survive paycheck to paycheck forever. I wanted out of that moldy apartment, out of constant stress. I wanted options. So I started looking things up: investments, real estate, passive income. I didn't even know what half the words meant at first, but I watched YouTube videos on my lunch breaks and borrowed books from the library. I built a budget in a spiral notebook and forced myself to stick to it, even if it meant living on ramen and peanut butter for weeks. One afternoon, I ducked into a cafe between classes, mostly just to warm up and use the Wi-Fi. I was sipping the smallest coffee they sold and scrolling local listings when I saw it. For sale by owner, duplex, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom per unit, needs work, cheap, serious inquiries only. Price, $38,000. I sat there staring at the screen, heart racing. It was in a rough neighborhood, the pictures were awful, graffiti on the siding, 1 window boarded up, kitchen full of trash. But it was real. And weirdly, it was doable. I Googled the address. Sketchy part of town, sure, but I'd seen worse. A roof was a roof. I scribbled out a plan that night. What I had in savings, what I could afford monthly, how much I could maybe borrow. It was laughable on paper. No family support, no cosigner, and a waitress's credit score. But I applied for a personal loan anyway. The loan officer at the bank looked at me like I was lost. "You're how old?" she asked. 19, and I'm not asking for a handout, I said. I'm asking for a shot. She told me she'd get back to me in a week. I didn't hold my breath. While I waited, I watched every home repair video I could find. I learned what a stud finder was, how to replace a faucet, how to fix drywall. Half the stuff I didn't understand, but I kept watching, kept trying. A week later, I got an email. Loan approved. I stared at the screen so long my coffee went cold. The next day, I signed the paperwork. 2 days after that, I had keys in my hand. The place smelled like cat piss and rot. The floor creaked with every step. A raccoon bolted out of the attic when I opened the hatch. But none of it scared me off. I spent every spare minute there, before class, after work, between shifts. I bought a used toolbox from a guy off Craigslist and started small. I patched a hole in the drywall, screwed in a new outlet plate, fixed a leaky faucet in the upstairs unit. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. I painted over the graffiti myself, took 3 coats. My arms felt like noodles afterward, but seeing those clean walls made me feel like I could actually do this. Some nights I fell asleep on the living room floor in a sleeping bag, covered in paint flecks and drywall dust, hands blistered, head pounding. But I kept going. I didn't tell anyone about the duplex. There was no one to tell. But for the first time since I walked out of my parents' house, I didn't feel powerless. I felt like I was building something. By the second week, I knew the layout of that duplex better than the back of my hand. Every crack, every warped floorboard, every wire that sparked if you looked at it wrong, I knew it all. I spent my nights covered in plaster dust and paint fumes, eating gas station sandwiches on the front steps between sanding cabinets and pulling rusted nails out of the floor. Half the time, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I watched the same YouTube tutorial 5 times just to change a light fixture. I rewired a breaker box wrong and blew out the power to the entire upstairs unit. When I tried to reseal the bathroom tub, the caulk dried in lumpy globs, and I had to scrape it all off and start over. But each mistake taught me something, and I didn't quit. The first time I unclogged a sink drain on my own, I grinned like a maniac and yelled, "Suck it, plumbing!" to an empty kitchen. That place started to change. So did I. The walls went from piss yellow to clean white. I replaced busted blinds, laid down cheap laminate flooring, fixed the wobbly staircase rail, patched ceiling holes, and found out the hard way how much a 5-gallon bucket of joint compound actually weighs. The neighbors stared when they saw me hauling tools by myself, but no one said anything. I didn't need help, I needed results. I scraped and painted and patched until my knuckles bled, and my back felt like it belonged to a 50-year-old man. I still worked 3 jobs and took night classes. I was dead on my feet most days, but that duplex became the only place I actually wanted to be. It wasn't pretty, but it was mine. 2 months in, I listed the upstairs unit. The ad was simple. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, newly updated, clean, quiet. A straight-up lie about the quiet. But no one needed to know about the guy 2 houses down who blasted Metallica at 2 a.m. A week later, I met my first tenant. Her name was Denise. Single mom, 2 kids, tired eyes but polite. She looked around and said, "It ain't the Ritz, but it's solid. You the landlord?" "Yeah," I said. "It's just me." She nodded. Respect. When she handed me that first rent check, I stared at it like it might disappear. $800. Real money. In my hands, from something I built. I waited until she left, then locked the door, leaned against the wall, and just breathed. That check changed everything. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was making something real. A second stream of income. A step up. I opened a savings account, paid down my credit cards, replaced the busted heater in my apartment, started planning renovations for the downstairs unit, but even with the progress, the loneliness didn't vanish. There were nights I stood in the finished upstairs hallway, lights on, fresh paint gleaming, and felt the silence crawl up my spine. Like something was still missing and I couldn't name it. Sometimes I caught myself wishing I could show my mom, just to see her reaction. Not for praise, just acknowledgement. Proof that I wasn't a failure. But I pushed that thought down. I had work to do, so I filled the silence with purpose. Built a new routine around fixing, planning, improving. That place gave me structure, gave me a reason to keep moving. One night after class, I stopped in front of the duplex with a bag of tools slung over my shoulder. I looked at the porch light I'd installed last week. It was glowing steady. I unlocked the door, flipped the switch, and walked back inside. I dropped my bag by the door and flicked off the porch light. The second I stepped into the kitchen, my phone started buzzing on the counter. No one ever called me. Not unless it was a bill collector or a wrong number. I checked the screen. Mom. My stomach tightened. I hadn't seen her name pop up since the night I left. I stared at the phone until it almost stopped ringing, then picked it up and answered. "Hello?" There was a pause, then her voice. Soft, too careful. "Rachel? Hi, sweetie." Sweetie. Like we just talked last week. Like she hadn't let me walk out without saying a damn word. "What do you want?" I asked flat. She hesitated. Your father and I were thinking about you, wondering how you've been." "I'm alive, clearly." "We heard you bought a property," she said, trying to sound casual. "That little duplex? Your uncle forwarded us a link. That's impressive." I didn't say anything. "We were surprised," she went on, "but happy for you, truly." I leaned on the counter, heart pounding. It wasn't shock, it was suspicion. I could hear something underneath her voice, something practiced. "You didn't call to catch up," I said. "Why now?" She gave a light laugh, fake as hell. "Oh, honey, don't be like that. We just miss you, that's all. We were hoping you'd come home for Thanksgiving." Now I knew I wasn't imagining it. She paused again, waiting for me to melt or cry or say I missed them too. I didn't. "I don't know," I said. "You told me not to come crawling back." "That was your father," she said quickly. "Things got out of hand that night. You know how he is." And you didn't say a word. There was silence on her end, long enough that I almost hung up. "We want to make things right," she said. "We were wrong, both of us. We'd love to have you here for dinner, if you're willing." Her voice was calmer now, rehearsed, measured, like she was reading off a script she'd practiced in front of the mirror. "Just dinner," she added. "No pressure." It didn't sound like no pressure. It sounded like a trap wrapped in tablecloth. Still, I couldn't ignore the feeling that maybe, just maybe, they meant it. Or at least she did. Part of me still wanted to look my parents in the eye and make them see who I'd become. I exhaled through my nose and rubbed my temple. "I'll think about it." "I'll tell your father," she said, voice suddenly bright. "He'll be so glad." Somehow I doubted that. We hung up. I stared at the wall for a long time. Was this a real olive branch, or did they just want a piece of what I had now? I didn't know yet, but I was going. Thanksgiving hit with gray skies and cold wind, the kind that stuck in your bones even with a coat on. I stood outside their door for a solid minute, just staring at it. Same wreath, same spotless porch, same potted plants that somehow never died. When I finally knocked, my mom yanked the door open like she'd been waiting all morning. "Rachel," she said too brightly, arms stretched out. "Come in, sweetie." I stiffened up as she hugged me. Her perfume was exactly the same, some floral thing that always made me sneeze. "You look great," she said, stepping back to study me like I was a guest, not her daughter. My dad appeared behind her. "Rachel?" Just that. No smile, no warmth, just a name. Then he gave me this forced little nod like we were at a board meeting. The house was clean to the point of suffocating. Candles lit, fireplace going, table already set like it was staged for a magazine. Not a speck of dust, not a thing out of place. Too perfect. I followed them inside, my boots echoing on the polished hardwood. "You've really done well for yourself," my mom said as we sat in the living room. "We're proud of you." "You said I was a burden," I said flatly. She gave this tight smile like she'd practiced it. People say things in the heat of the moment. Dad didn't seem heated. He seemed pretty damn clear. He cleared his throat and stood up. "Let's eat." The dining room looked like a Hallmark card. Turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, those little place cards with our names on them like this was some fancy dinner party. We sat, and they kept the conversation light. Too light. They asked about school, the duplex, my vision for the future. Every answer I gave got the same response. Smiles, nods, compliments. Like they'd been handed a script with bullet points to hit. I didn't trust any of it. After dessert, they cleared the table while I sat there clutching a mug of coffee. My mom came back in first, followed by my dad, who leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. My mom sat across from me, smoothing the tablecloth like it was part of the setup. "So," she started, voice sweet, "your father and I have hit a bit of a rough patch financially." There it was. I didn't say anything. "We invested in a few things, property mostly. The market turned. Bad timing." My dad spoke next. "It's not as bad as it sounds. It's manageable. But we could use some help." "Help?" I repeated. "As in money." My mom hesitated. "Just enough to keep things afloat. We were thinking 200,000. I laughed. I didn't mean to. It just came out. One sharp, bitter laugh. "Are you kidding me?" "It's not a handout," my dad said quickly. "It's an investment. We'll pay you back." "Just like you invested in me?" I asked. "You told me not to call you, not to come back." My mom folded her hands. "We were wrong. We see that now. But you've built something strong, Rachel. You're in a position to help. And suddenly, I'm your daughter again?" "Don't be cruel," she said, voice cracking just enough to sound like the victim. I stared at both of them, heart thudding. Part of me still wanted their approval, still wanted to believe they cared about me, not just the money. But that part was shrinking fast. "You don't care that I'm okay," I said. "You care that I made it without you. And now you want in." My dad's jaw tightened. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said, pushing back from the table. "I'm being honest." I stood up, grabbed my coat off the chair, and walked toward the door without waiting for a response. My mom called after me. "Rachel, please, let's just talk." "You had your chance," I said without turning around. I opened the door, stepped into the cold, and shut it behind me. I didn't make it 3 steps down the porch before the front door swung open behind me. "Rachel, wait, just come back inside," my dad said. I stopped, not for him, just for myself, to feel the air, to breathe. He stood in the doorway, stiff, like he couldn't decide whether to walk out or shut the door on me again. I turned slowly. "Why? So you can pitch me again?" He stepped aside, holding the door open. "Please." I walked back in, coat still on. My mom was pacing the living room now, trying to keep her face composed, but her eyes gave her away. That fake warmth was gone. This was panic. "We're not asking you to throw money away," she said quickly. "It's a business. We just hit a bad stretch. The economy." "Don't sell me a story," I cut in. "Say what you want." "We want your help," my dad said. "We wouldn't be asking if we weren't desperate." There it was. No more sugarcoating, no more polite smiles. $200,000, I said, crossing my arms. "You think I'm sitting on that kind of cash?" "You've done well," my mom said. "Real estate, rent, you're smart, resourceful, and you don't have children. You've got freedom." "You mean I don't have baggage?" I snapped. That's what you're calling freedom? She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. You know what it felt like to sleep in a motel after your dad tells you not to come back? To work 3 jobs while getting called a failure from the same people who slammed the door in my face? My voice didn't shake. It came out cold, steady. I meant every word. My mom walked toward me, hands out like I was some wounded animal. We regret that. Truly. But we're still your parents. We're trying to fix things. No, you're trying to fix your mess, I said. Not our relationship. Your money problems. My dad jumped in, like he couldn't hold it in any longer. That duplex of yours? That was smart. But that doesn't mean you can throw that kind of money around. We'll structure a repayment plan with interest. I'm not a damn bank. It's family, my mom whispered. You don't turn your back on family. I laughed once, sharp and bitter. You did, the night I left. They both froze. My mom's shoulders dropped. We made a mistake, but you can't let one night define everything. It wasn't one night, I said. It was years, years of walking on eggshells, of never being enough unless I did something that made you look good. And now that I've built something without you, you suddenly remember I exist? My dad looked at the floor. My mom blinked fast like she was fighting tears. You can say whatever you want, I said, but you're not asking for forgiveness. You're asking for cash. My mom tried one last time. If you could just help us cover this debt, we'd be set. Everything would change. No, I said. You'd go right back to pretending I never left. My dad took a step forward. Rachel, I'm done. I walked toward the door again, grabbed the handle, then paused. I didn't come here to save you, I said without looking back. I came to see if you were still the same people who let me go. I opened the door. They didn't follow me. I slammed my car door shut in their driveway and didn't look back. My hands were still shaking when I pulled into my apartment lot. I sat there in the dark, gripping the wheel, jaw locked, replaying every word they said, every fake smile, every forced compliment, every dollar amount. It wasn't guilt, it was insult. They didn't want a relationship. They wanted a bailout. So I started digging. That same night, I opened my laptop and searched their names in the county public records database. I'd never cared about that stuff before. Property liens, tax filings, business licenses. But I learned quick. They were drowning. The records showed 3 open liens on their business, delinquent property taxes on their office building, a lawsuit from a former partner. Their business license was flagged as pending revocation. And the house? They'd taken out a second mortgage last year, and still they were lighting candles and printing place cards like nothing was wrong. The more I read, the more disgusted I felt. They hadn't just hit a rough patch. They were spiraling, and they wanted me to patch the hole like I owed them something. I printed everything I could find, 8 pages of proof. Then I went deeper, searched their LLCs, bank liens, any affiliated businesses. Found shell companies with no real addresses. A court date for unpaid contractor fees. Pages of red flags. This wasn't desperation, it was a cover-up. They hadn't just come to me as a last resort, they'd come to me because they thought I'd roll over. Because in their minds, I was still the kid with no spine, the one they could manipulate. They forgot who walked out that door with $80 and nothing but rage to keep going. I stuffed the documents into a folder and stared at the cover. I didn't feel satisfied. Not yet. I felt ready. The next morning, I put on jeans, boots, and my thickest coat. I grabbed the folder and headed straight back to their house. I wasn't scared this time. Their porch still looked like a goddamn magazine cover. Perfect pumpkins, perfect wreath, same smug welcome mat. I rang the bell twice. My dad answered the door, caught off guard. Rachel, let's talk, I said. He stepped back without a word, and I walked in. My mom came into the living room, clearly not expecting to see me. I brought something, I said, holding up the folder. What is that? She asked, brow tight. Truth, I said, walking to the coffee table. Let's lay it all out. I opened the folder and spread out the documents. Liens, tax records, lawsuits, foreclosure notices. I watched their faces change with each page. My mom's hand went to her mouth. My dad just stared at the stack. You lied to me, I said. Not just about needing help. You made it sound like it was a small dip, a temporary problem. We didn't think you'd understand, my mom started. No, I snapped. You didn't think I'd look? My dad cleared his throat. This doesn't change the fact that we need assistance. It changes everything, I said. You weren't honest. You weren't transparent. You used Thanksgiving as a setup. My mom sat down slowly, staring at the papers like they might rearrange themselves. You manipulated me, I continued, and you're not going to guilt me into saving you. My dad's voice got low. We are your parents. And you were supposed to protect me, but when it was me who needed help, you told me I was a burden. He looked away. So here's the truth, I said, standing straight. You're not just in debt. You're broke. You're in denial. And you're looking for someone else to take the fall. My mom's lip quivered. Rachel, please. I closed the folder, picked it up, and tucked it under my arm. This time, I don't owe you a damn thing. I turned and walked toward the door. They didn't stop me. I didn't leave that house right away. I walked to the door, hand on the knob, and paused. Then I turned around. We're not finished, I said. They looked up like I'd just pulled the pin on a grenade. I walked back to the dining table and set the folder down in front of them. Saturday opened it slowly. Page 1, the foreclosure notice. I want you to look at what you tried to hide. They didn't move, so I flipped the next page. Delinquent property taxes, 3 years unpaid. You lied about this. My mom reached for the folder, but I stopped her hand. Let me finish. Their faces were pale. My dad's jaw locked, his fingers twitching near the edge of the table. I slid the next few pages forward. Lawsuits, liens, a revoked contractor's license. This is what you call a temporary setback? We didn't want to overwhelm you, my mom whispered. You wanted to trap me, I snapped. You thought if you kept it vague enough, I'd hand you the money out of guilt. My dad finally spoke. You don't know everything. Business is complicated. No, I said. You made it complicated. You used fake LLCs and shell companies. You lied to your employees, your investors, and now to me. He didn't argue. I leaned forward, both hands flat on the table. You haven't cared about me in years, but now that I'm worth something, you want a piece of it. You didn't ask for forgiveness. You asked for a check. My mom's voice cracked. We were scared, Rachel. We didn't know what else to do. You had a daughter, I said, and you threw her out like trash. You could have called 100 times before this. You chose now. That's not love. That's survival. They had nothing left to say. I closed the folder. The sound echoed louder than anything else in the room. You've lost your business, and now you've lost me too. My mom started to cry. My dad stared at the table like maybe it would open up and swallow him whole. I stood up, grabbed the folder, and walked to the door. They stayed silent. I stepped outside, pulled the door shut behind me, and exhaled into the cold night air. It was quiet, heavy, but clean. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. I didn't need their love. I didn't need their approval. I was free.